when she wins,
yes,
tell us what happens to Donald Trump.
First case, we'll go back to New York. These are 34 felony counts, and he shows absolutely no remorse. And he was held in contempt basically 10 times by this district judge. He shows nothing but disrespect for the law, disrespect for the court, disrespect for the jury, and I don't think it's a stretch to conclude that he might get some sentence of incarceration.
Hello everybody, and welcome to George Conway Explains It All. To Sarah, I'm Sarah Longwell, publisher of the Bulwark, and welcome to the show, everyone. We're doing it live.
Where are we?
We're doing it live from Pittsburgh, and because I'm not a lawyer, I've asked my good friend George Conway from the Society for the Rule of Law to explain the legal news to me. So, George, tonight we thought there might be some big legal news to talk about, which I was excited about because there's not as much as we thought there might be when we started this podcast. But Judge Chuck can't allow Jack Smith to file his appendix of evidence in the D.C. January 6th case, which I had to have somebody explain this to me on the bus about the appendices and why that's so important. It's like, how many pages of appendices is it?
I don't know. I mean, I think each appendix was probably like 1,500 to 2,000 pages, just guessing from.
Because it's like a page, they do a page for every tweet that Donald Trump sent. It's like everything that's in the brief. This is what I've learned today. I'm going to explain to you what I've learned about the law today. In the appendices, they basically take everything they've marshaled as evidence and they cite it.
Yeah, and then that's what we do as lawyers. Like when we, even in civil cases, you know, you basically, everything you cite on a summary, on a motion that's being decided on the papers, you put it in an appendix and they can be just humongous, and that's what they did here. They were required to do that.
Okay, so Trump fought hard to keep Smith from being allowed to file the appendix because he didn't want any more of the evidence about him coming out before the election.
Why would that be?
Yeah. It's 18, my producer put it right here. But in the 1,800 pages filed today, it was all either stuff that's already publicly available or blank redacted pages. So is there anything new in it at all? Did you learn anything from it?
Look, I did not. I was too busy with my musical career to really expend a lot of effort. But I am told reliably from reliable sources, various news organizations, and from skimming a couple of volumes, there's not much in there. It's mostly blank pages because a lot of this stuff is investigative materials, rules, grand jury materials, which are ordinarily not allowed to be disclosed. And the only reason why we know what's in there to an extent is because the brief was largely filed unredacted. What they did was they basically covered up the names of the people who had the great quotes, and you know, there was a big guessing game that lasted about 25 minutes where people figured out who everyone was. So the story is really laid out in the brief, and the appendices are just mostly blank pages. If you really have trouble sleeping at night, there is a section of the appendix that consists of Mike Pence's biography, and that you could use. That's the most useful part of what was released today.
Well, so my producer, who's a lawyer, was showing me the Mike Pence part, and it was actually interesting because they'd gone through and highlighted the sections from his book where he said things like, "I went to Donald Trump as a friend to explain him why he couldn't overturn the election," and that is relevant. Why? That is relevant
because the issue that's going to be litigated both before Judge Chutkan and in the Court of Appeals and possibly again in the Supreme Court is whether or not Donald Trump's conversations with one Michael Pence were part of his executive branch duties, Article 2 executive branch duties. And there are two answers to that. One is, well, actually there are three now. One is they're just friends, or they were. Second is they were just running mates. And third is, even if Pence was acting in some kind of official capacity, it wasn't an official executive capacity. He was acting in his capacity as President of the Senate, who presides under Article 1 of the Constitution in the counting of electoral votes. And that should not, I mean, I expect it would not, and certainly Jack Smith is arguing that it should not, be covered by executive immunity, which consists of the immunity that the president has in having conversations with people about his executive duties. And it wasn't about his executive duties, it was about, you know, staying in office illegally and talking to his former friend, Mike Pence, in his capacity as somebody who was going to preside over the electoral vote count on January 6, 2021.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Trump has been
that
whining.
That wouldn't make a great song, I have to say.
Trump's been whining that it's unfair for Jack Smith to file his brief
Imagine that, Trump's been whining.
Yeah. So he's filed it this close to the election. That's what he's mad about, right? Saying that it is, in fact, election interference.
No.
Yeah. But instead of filing a reply brief to make his counter-arguments, Trump asked for an extension to hold off on his reply until after the election. That way he can be both aggrieved, but also have it not come out.
Right.
Right? So he can complain about it. This is like a pretty typical Trump strategy.
Yeah, everything is delay. Everything absolutely is delay. I don't know that he thought that he could get the case knocked out when he took the case all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he didn't get it knocked out. I mean, he created some very bad precedent for the future, but he really didn't succeed in having the Supreme Court create an immunity doctrine that was big enough to cover his acts. So he's still in big trouble. But, you know, he did manage to delay a trial until after the election. This case is not going to get tried till sometime next year. And it's probably going to be middle of next year because there's going to be this fight about immunity.
So we talked about this, actually. You know, when George and I started this podcast, we started it because Donald Trump had how many indictments? 80...
Four indictments, and there were, I think, originally 92, 91, 92 counts.
Who can say? Who can keep track?
It's hard,
right?
You know. Many people are saying you were the best indictments and the most most counts. Nobody has had as many counts as you. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I'll stop there.
But then, none of it materialized, right? Fonnie Willis, as much as she is celebrated in your song.
Yeah, I almost took her out of the song.
Things kind of went south down there in Georgia. January 6th case hasn't moved because they ended up thinking, you know, they got kicked up to the Supreme Court. None of it. None of it moved. So, are you surprised? I mean, we're 2 weeks out from the election. I think most of the people in this room thought, up till this point, we would have had a trial for something.
We did. 34 counts, guilty, 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 all the way
I forgot about that one.
I know, I mean, it's funny, it's like we do not hear every day, we should be hearing every day, the convicted felon Donald Trump, okay? He's still a convicted felon. And he just managed to put off his sentencing until after the judge in New York felt sorry for him, I guess. But I guess
I meant the cases that I feel
the real cases.
Well, no, just the ones that I think are much more germane to the
presidency,
preservation of democracy, and what everybody. I mean,
democracy.
Trump sort of being a scumbag, paying off a porn star, lying about it in his company books. I don't know. It seems sort of like baked into the equation in a way that him being convicted.
It's just general scumminess as opposed to scumminess involving the presidency.
Yeah, I guess I want to know if you're surprised that we find ourselves here without the American people getting to see a court of law adjudicate whether or not Donald Trump tried to overturn an election and or mishandle classified documents. Two things very relevant to the job that he is about to.
Yeah. Well, not going to lie, I thought the election interference trial, the January 6th trial, would have gone ahead by now because I did not think that the Supreme Court was going to take these arguments as seriously as it did and take all the time that it did. And I think that, I don't think they did that much to really hurt the case, but they did by thinking about it and overthinking about it and basically deciding matters that I don't think really needed to be decided at this point. Essentially, it was like what Justice Gorsuch said during the arguments, I'm not so much concerned about this case, I'm concerned about the next case. And so they basically wrote an opinion that deals, they deal with hypotheticals in the future mostly about what happens if the president does something and it's truly his official duties. He did get off on the Justice Department stuff, and I think the Supreme Court got that wrong, but most of this stuff is not official conduct, and the ruling that they made was that if it's part of his official duties, that he's talking to people who are his subordinates for purposes of exercising his official powers, legally or illegally, which is tough thing to accept, you know, he'd be immune. But they didn't have to go as far as they did, but they, you know, the Supreme Court has this terrible tendency in the modern era, and I think you know, I'm going to blame the liberals for it, actually. The liberals started this a little bit, where they want to create a legal structure that in individual cases that last for all times, and that's not what judges are supposed to do. Judges are supposed to just decide the case in front of them, bit by bit, incrementally, because if you try to do more and try to foresee what's going to happen in the next case and the case after that, when in this such circumstance there may never be another case like it, you know, you're going to screw it up, and that's what they did. But anyway, I mean, I thought that this case would have gotten tried at least in the summer or maybe in the fall, and I was wrong on that. The other case, I gave up hope on, the other federal case, which was the one before the Florida judge.
Eileen Cannon.
Eileen Cannon, yeah, she was going to do anything she could to not try that case. And that's what she did. She just took her time with every little motion, motions to scheduled briefs. She'd have motions on motions to schedule briefs, and then motions on motions on motions. I mean, she literally took as much, I mean, it's one of the powers that a trial court judge has, state or federal, is the power over his or her docket and the ability to slow things down or speed things up, depending on, you know, what the exercise of the judge's discretion. And she clearly exercised her discretion in terms to slow this down as much as possible. Meanwhile, she's got the case involving the guy who tried to assassinate Trump on the golf course, and she's pushing that one really fast, which kind of tells you that she's capable of moving more quickly than she does. And so, you know, that's turned out to be a disaster. The good news there, I'm probably jumping ahead 3 questions, right?
No, just wrap this one up so we can go to the
Okay, all right. No, I'll wrap that one up. That's enough.
Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. You know, when I first tried OneSkin, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I can't argue with the results. I can't remember the last time my skin looked and felt so rejuvenated. OneSkin's proprietary OS01 peptide is the first ingredient proven to switch off the damaged senescent cells that cause lines, wrinkles, and thin, crepey skin. Free from over 1,500 chemicals and preservatives that can make skin red, irritated, or itchy, their products are certified safe for sensitive skin, dermatologist tested, and approved for independent testing platforms like SkinSafe. OneSkin's multi-purpose products prove you don't need a complicated routine to achieve healthier skin. The cleanser and topical supplements can be used with other products or treatments and easily fit into your current skincare routine. I use OneSkin all the time, and you can see how baby soft this skin is. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code AskGeorge at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code AskGeorge. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support your show and tell them we sent you. Give your skin the scientifically proven gentle care it deserves with OneSkin. Okay, because since we didn't, that's sort of like, that's it, that's all the legal news we have. So I want to play a fantasy game with you, okay?
Okay, let me get the guitar.
And I want to imagine a world where Kamala Harris has won the presidency, okay, right?
What a lovely world.
Now, I think it's...
Now I'm going to be in a reverie for the next 20 minutes.
Well, so I think, you know, if she wins...
When she wins.
Okay, everybody calm down. Okay, we're just playing a game. Fine. When she wins...
Yes.
Tell us what happens to Donald Trump, right? He's running to stay out of jail. She's president. What happens next? What moves? What do you foresee happening in terms of how does the January 6th case proceed? How does the
I'll do all 4 cases. First case, we'll go back to New York. He's going to get sentenced in November, and I think there's a decent chance he'll get jail time. Okay, I mean, let me qualify that. I think he will get some kind of sentence of incarceration, but then they'll have to work out some kind of deal where he's like, you know, in the pool house at Mar-a-Lago or something with an ankle bracelet if they can find one big enough. So I think there's a good chance there. I mean, the arguments pro and con a sentence of incarceration or something more than a fine are, well, he's a first offender, I mean, technically, and, you know, this wasn't a crime of violence. Against that, on the other hand, is these were 34 counts, and these were 34 felony counts, and he shows absolutely no remorse. And there's always an and with Trump, and he was held in contempt basically 10 times by this district judge. He shows nothing but disrespect for the law, disrespect for the court, disrespect for the jury, and I don't think it's a stretch to conclude that he might get some sentence of incarceration. I like the joke that he belongs in Rikers Island. I don't think they'll send him there, honestly. I wanted to put up a billboard saying, you know, I tried to put up a billboard, Sarah knows this, on the BQE, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, those of you in New York, you know it, that would say, you know, welcome this way to Rikers Island, future home of Donald J. Trump. But the billboard company didn't like it, you know, he hasn't been sentenced yet, all right, you know. All right, so that's New York, okay? Even, you know, it's either that or he's gonna get a huge fine. That's one. Okay, two, let's do January 6th. January 6th, Judge Chutkin, she is gonna push this along. She is going to rule on the current pending motions. These appendices were filed in connection with Donald Trump's motion for presidential immunity and the Supreme Court's remand instructions, sending it back to the district court with instructions that the district judge has to carefully parse the evidence that is being proffered by the prosecutors to determine whether or not it speaks to official acts and whether or not the evidence involves official presidential communications. And so she's going to have to go through that record piece by piece by piece and basically say, this is in, this is out, this is in, this is out. And I think for the most part, it's all going to be in, and I think the only possible question is the question of Pence, for the reasons I said. I mean, the Trump people are going to argue Pence is the vice president, he's a member of the executive branch, so conversations with the vice president of the United States and between the president of the United States and the vice president of the United States are presumptively immune from use as evidence and for prosecuting crimes because that they're part of the, you know, the vice president is part of the executive branch and works for it. And then the counter argument is the one I just made, the arguments I just made, which is like, well, that's not what he was doing at the time. And that's going to take a while, but I think she's going to act quickly, and I think sooner or later, by the end of the year probably, or early next, she will make a decision as to what's in and what's out, and then there'll be another appeal. Trump will take it back up to the D.C. Circuit, and then if he loses in the D.C. Circuit, or whoever loses in the D.C. Circuit, somebody's going to take a crack at the Supreme Court. So this could end up taking another year. Or it might not. Maybe the Supreme Court will say, yeah, you got it right, and they're going to leave it alone now. Who knows? I'm done predicting what this Supreme Court does. So that, but I am pretty confident, even without the Pence evidence. I mean, with the evidence that the prosecutors have assembled now and presented in their briefs, I think he goes to jail. I think there's no question he gets convicted. I think he goes to jail even without the Pence stuff. So one way or the other, you know, I think they will be able to show a District of Columbia jury, sorry, Donald, that you know, he was guilty of these crimes beyond a reasonable doubt.
Quick mini question in there.
Mini question.
So in the first instance, you said that because he was a first-time offender, he would get a lighter sentence or potentially, you know, not prison time. If he gets sentenced then in these subsequent cases,
he's not going to be a first-time. She's learning from this. She's learning from our podcast.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys.
She is. He will no longer be a first-time offender. How about that? Oh, too bad. Poor Donald.
Okay. And then, so the next one, so the documents case, which has always been the one that you've been like open and closed.
Yeah, the documents case is an open and shut. I mean, basically, it's like a drug bust case, right? The cops raid the house, the crack house, and they find all the, you know, all the heating materials and all the stuff they use to, you know, melt the cocaine or whatever they do to make crack.
They melt cocaine?
I don't know. Anybody here know? You have the right to remain silent. But no, I mean, you know, whatever they do, all the paraphernalia, basically was in his possession. And not only that, not only were the documents in his possession, not only did the documents say, that they were classified SCIF-level documents or whatever they said on them. They've got plenty of evidence saying that he was trying to hide them. He submitted false information to his lawyers to submit to the FBI. He tried to get somebody to destroy the videotape of the hallway leading to the basement where he kept them. I mean, it's not only did he commit a violation of the Espionage Act, which prohibits the retention of national, not even classified. It doesn't even matter whether the documents were classified. So his bullshit about, I declassified them with my great brain. It doesn't even matter. This Espionage Act prohibits the retention of national security related documents after they have been requested back by the government. And they were requested back by the government, and he screwed around and didn't give them back. Guilty. There's just no question what he did there.
Do you go to jail for that?
Up to 10 years.
Oh.
Each count. 10 years.
Ooh.
I mean, I think he'll get concurrent sentences, but, I mean, and the conduct is he's also guilty of obstruction. Okay? I mean, there's no question he had Nauta and I don't know, this other guy, I don't know, who I forget the names, but basically they were trying to hide the documents from the FBI. And then he grabs a chunk of the documents, has them turned back to the National Archives and said, that's it, don't got any more. Okay? Total lie, as you would expect from Donald Trump. And that's just flat out, that's obstruction beyond any reasonable doubt. I don't even think Chutkan, if she actually let the case go to trial, could screw that up. Although I'm not going to win. But that goes back to a point that I should have talked about earlier, about Chutkan. Right now, she dismissed the case on...
Everybody's telling you that
now,
it's
Chutkan, tell me canon, oh my gosh. Oh, I got to remember, she's in the song, right? Got to remember that.
Support for today's episode also comes from CB Distillery. Let me guess, your medicine cabinet is crammed with stuff that doesn't work. You still aren't sleeping, you still hurt, and you're stressed out. That's how it was for me, so I cleared out my cabinet and reset my health with CBD from CB Distillery. And it's been a real change. CB Distillery's targeted formulations are made from the highest quality, clean ingredients. No fluff, no fillers, just pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health. In 2 non-clinical surveys, 81% of customers experienced more calm, 80% said CBD helped with pain after physical activity, and an impressive 90% said they slept better with CBD, which has been the big one for me. CBD Distillery has really aided my ability to get a good night's sleep and has helped me remain as calm as I can be with this election, which, it's a sliding scale. If you struggle with a health concern and haven't found relief, make the change like I did to CB Distillery. And with over 2 million customers and a solid 100% money-back guarantee, CB Distillery is the source to trust. I have a 20% discount to get you started. Visit cbdistillery.com and use code AskGeorge for 20% off. That's cbdistillery.com, AskGeorge, cbdistillery.com.
Now, Cannon, dismissed the case on the grounds that, that basically, I can't even comprehend it, but she dismissed the case, and it's insane what she did. And one of the things that in the 11th Circuit, there's a rule that's it's not a strict recusal rule where the statutes, the Judicial Code, Title 28, says that if a judge who shows bias or the appearance of bias has to be recused. There's actually some discretionary power that courts of appeals have to reassign cases when judges are screwing them up. And there's kind of a rule that has been characterized to me by local lawyers down there as a 3 strikes rule that basically says that the Court of Appeals can and will reassign a case if a judge basically screws up a case 3 times in one particular way, to the point where it's just, we don't want to have to deal with her again. And, she got reversed twice early on in the grand jury phase of the investigation, once for appointing a special master, the second for basically refusing to allow the Justice Department to review the documents that it obtained pursuant to the search warrant. And the Court of Appeals was just absolutely brutal in saying that the judge has no power to do that. This would be the third reversal. And so, you know, there's a chance, I hope, that the Court of Appeals panel takes it, and I don't think even the conservative judges on the 11th Circuit are going to be averse to it, because one of the panels that decided the earlier cases was headed by the Chief Judge Pryor, who was on one of Trump's short lists. I know him personally. He's a man of great integrity, and he was so scathing in his reversal of Cannon.
All right, hold on. Because unlike when you and I tape and we have unlimited time, we're on a time clock here.
I'm sorry.
I just want to, I want to ask you one more question about if Kamala Harris wins. So let's say there's a there's a pretty likely scenario where she wins, but Republicans have the Senate.
Right.
And so if Donald Trump claims, as we are certain he will, that she's illegitimate, she was elected, you know, whatever, they cheated and everything, and the senators, Republican senators we have seen always sort of take up his cause and also say, yes, it was stolen. How is she, because people do not pay enough attention to the fact that if Donald Trump wins, he will probably get 3 Supreme Court seats, 3 more Supreme Court seats. And so if she wins, she's going to have a lot of Supreme Court battles too. I mean, I don't think that Thomas and Alito both hold on the whole time. Sotomayor probably retires. So she's going to have some fights on her hands and to appoint some justices. But how will she get it through that Republican Senate? How will she get anyone confirmed, especially if they're sort of on the record saying she's an illegitimately elected president?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, are they really?
Thanks. I was trying to get,
well, I know. I mean, look, I mean, we saw what Mitch McConnell did in 2016. But the problem that they're going to have is they're going to have to do it more than once. And I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to confirm somebody, because it's really going to harm, you know, it's one thing to go with 8 justices for a year, but if you have more than one open seat, it's going to be much, much tougher for people to justify, you know, having a 7-person Supreme Court or a 6-person Supreme Court for 2, 3, or 4 years. So I don't know. I really don't. I cannot tell you how the
politics. So you think they can't hold up multiple?
Well, I think they could. They might try, but that's, you know. But this is why it's so. What November 5th is so important, because you know that would be the ultimate. I mean, people are talking about, both sides talk about how, we have to respect the court. You got the Republicans saying we don't want this plan to add additional seats to the court or create some kind of a seniority process where you can add justices and others become senior and so on and so forth. Well, there are legitimate arguments there. We've had those. And you know, that would be equally destructive to not approve justices to adjust the candidates for the Supreme Court.
Okay, so then the inverse. Let's say Trump wins, which is why I keep doing this. I'm just playing hypotheticals here. Okay, I'm just trying to I want to lay out a couple different scenarios. But let's say Trump wins. What are the chances that he tries to throw out the 22nd Amendment, which is the one that says a president is term limited, right, to 8 years? What if he tries to throw out the 22nd Amendment so that he can run again in 2028? Do you think the Supreme Court, well, Trump's eventual death comes up at every show. So usually it's Tim Miller that makes the, but okay, I mean, let's say he is. I mean, I don't know, Mad King, dying
autocrats. Not if he keeps swaying like that, he's going to stay fit forever.
Sorry to go so dark, but like, what would the Supreme Court? Now he's got six people on it.
I do not think there is any constitutional way that he would have any votes on any court in the land. I don't even think Judge Cannon would, Justice Cannon.
Yeah, you should be on the Supreme Court if he wins.
No,
just so you know.
Look, the 22nd Amendment says what it says. You can only be elected to the office of president
Yeah, but doesn't
twice.
the 14th Amendment say you can't have an insurrectionist holding office?
Yeah, but that...
And didn't the Supreme Court just make something up so that ended up not being the case?
You do have a point there. I just don't see...
You've been teaching me so well.
Yeah,
I know so much about the law now.
Yeah. I really, I think that I think the problem with the insurrection case was, yes, if you actually read the language of the Constitution, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which I thought conservatives liked to do, read the text, he should have been disqualified. On the other hand, there was this shock among everybody, because everybody had forgotten about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, that it exists and that it has logical application to this situation. And so I don't think people people on the right and the left could not get their minds and arms around the concept that someone could be disqualified from running for president of the United States for engaging in that conduct. I don't think you have that same psychological problem with 2 terms. Everybody understands 2 terms. We learned that in grade school. 2 terms. We can count to 2. Maybe Trump can't, but the rest of us can count to 2. And so I don't see how he's able to do that with the concurrence of the courts. That doesn't mean he won't try in some fashion. Okay, this is the man who in 2020 said, "Oh, this COVID thing, we can't have mail-in ballots. That's fraud. But let's postpone the election." It's like,
yeah, they're kind of making my point, bro.
Right.
Like I just,
but that would have never served. The law is so clear on that. It's like everybody knows every 4 years the statute says first Tuesday in November. So and if he ever tried to do that, he wouldn't look. I think he's going to have a difficult time governing anyway, because he's going to do some crazy shit, and he's going to grind the government to a halt. And if he ever tried to stay in, I don't think there'll be much left of the country, frankly, if he's president after 4 years. I got to tell you, okay. But if he managed to survive those 4 years and somehow not to destroy the government in 4 years, I just don't see how he would be able to stay in office longer than.
Okay, well, that's been keeping me up at night, so
Yeah.
I'm glad that you.
Yeah.
I'm still ish on how I feel.
But I don't want to cheer you up too much.
No, but the song did a lot for me. The song did a lot for me.
He can do a lot of damage in 4 years. He doesn't need 8 years.
Right.
And and he's going to be, his brain
He's
is
gonna
going to
test
his
every
brain
limit
is
that
already
exists.
jello, and I don't know what it's going to be 1, 2, or 3 years from now. There is really going to be nothing left of it.
On that very bright note, George Conway, thanks as always for explaining the legal news to me.
I met a kick-ass DA they call Funny. She took Don J. Trump downtown for a ride, 'cause he tried to steal 10,000 votes in Georgia. So Howie's number P111358809. It's the law and order women. They're gonna give him the law and order blues. Don drew a U.S. district judge named Tanya. He tried to slow her down to a snail's pace. He meant to put her off for forever, but he just can't seem to get her off his case. And now everybody, it's the law and order women. They're gonna give him the law and order blues. And the final verse here, I have to, I don't have anybody flicking at my iPad. So now I'm voting for a VP named Kamala, who crushed Donald's big ego in debate. She teased him about his teensy-weensy rallies, and he just couldn't help from swallowing the bait. It's a law and order, women. They're gonna give him the law and order blues.